Ladies and gentlemen, may I please have your attention? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are now live with BB3 TV.
Hello, Tommy. I kept my promise. I'm here. I kept my promise. I'm here.
I hope you understand.
I'm trying to help you while you're here. Trying to help. If you'd like to say anything. The room is yours. The room is yours.
You are now watching Turn to Gold on BB3 TV with your host, the Ghost Boy, Chris Cesare.
Hey everybody, welcome to Turn to Gold. I'm Chris Cesare. Welcome here on BB3 TV. I hope that you are all doing well this summer evening. We have now entered into August, which is usually the driest of the months. It's still warm, but in the Northeast here, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the tri-state area, we usually have nice balmy weather. I think it's really cool, my favorite time of year. Hello, Penny. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So it's going to be a nice time for us tonight. Usually I have a guest on, and I think we get great enjoyment out of that. I've had some pretty spectacular people on here, but I thought tonight I'd do something different. One, to shake things up a little bit, and two, because I have some pretty exciting news that I'd like to be able to share with you today. Now, news can be good, can be bad. Some people say no news is good news when they're waiting for bad things to happen. Others say this thing is bad press, so say everything you can do. And it's always interesting to see how people will react to things, and when you should share and not share. So hi Barry, hi Vince, hi Mara. Good to see you all here this evening. Back in 2012, there was a book written by Tim Shaw, and the book was called The C2D1 Haunting. I have a copy right here, and the foreword was done by John Zaffis. Get the glare off there, The Haunted Collector, right? And it was really the first book that was written about what happened to my college mates and I at Geneseo back in 1985. For about 25 years, most of us preferred not to talk about what had happened. It was dramatic, it was horrifying, grueling, terrifying. And oftentimes we don't share things that we look upon negatively or don't think will help to do so. And then eventually a few of us realized, we survived those days, weeks, months in that Western New York winter, and maybe we learned a few things in doing so. And it was through the good graces of people such as Mark Atria, Bill Edwards, Kerry Lyon, Michael Lewis, Alan Lewis, that I began to get the courage and strength to share the experience of what happened back in that room of C2D1 in Geneseo, State University of New York. C2D1 was in Erie Hall. Most of you know that I didn't want to talk about the ghosts back then. It would attract too much attention. So what we would do, instead of saying what's happening with the ghosts, we'd say how are things in C2D1. And it became known as the C2D1 Haunting, in large part because of that's what we tried to call the events to disguise what was happening. And here is a photograph. This is an image of Erie Hall. Erie Hall has three sections left. At that point, that was the A building. For some reason, the middle building was C and the far building was B. And the Erie Hall haunting occurred in the C central building. And where that light post is shining, there used to be a big tree there. And a few things happened by that tree. My room was C2D1, of course, on the second floor of that C building. We that window lit up on the second floor. That is actually the area where the haunting took place. I figured I'd show you that to give you a perspective of what the building looks like. It wasn't a spooky old building like many hauntings take place in. It wasn't an Indian burial ground. There was no, nothing that would have occurred, no murders there we knew about. Just a very nice, beautiful college setting. However, within days of hearing Lorraine Warren speak, we began this crazy activity. And this is an image of me on Valentine's Day, my arms out. You can see that my sleeves are flowing back on my sweatshirt, and the chest is blowing back in. The cardboard is bending back behind me with these ridiculous breezes, unnatural breezes in this enclosed room in February. And this is one of the examples that my friend Jeff tried to help and get proof of what was going on. And the picture I took, of course, is fairly well known as of the skeletal image. Mr. Dale Kazmarek analyzed this way back, my gosh, 25, 30 years ago. And you can see the pelvis, the spine, the rib cage, the sternum in that photograph above my bed, which of course is not very, very cool, and yeah, it is a beautiful campus. In fact, the physicality of it, the environment, the energy of it is one of the primary reasons I chose it, Vince. I was given or offered scholarships to Quinnipiac University, which is in Connecticut, for communications, Wittenberg University in Ohio. There was talk of going to Marist College, which is not too far from here. It's a good school. But I ended up choosing Geneseo because it was just a beautiful place. The campus, it had an Ivy League feel without having an Ivy League cost, if that makes any kind of sense. And beyond the building itself, the campus itself, it was located in a small town, Geneseo, New York, which reminded me, and I make no qualms about it, it really did remind me of that TV show from the 60s, Andrew Griffith Show with Don Knotts, Barney Fife, and Aunt Bee and Opie, and people were just had a nice, quiet, slow feel. I grew up not far from New York City, and the calmness, the healthiness, the air seemed cleaner. People still wore overalls. They had mom and pop stores every place. People said good morning and hello. And just loved it. And then when I looked out of the dining hall windows or the Erie Hall windows to the west, the college is up on a big hill. You could see for miles and miles the landscape, the hues of the farms and the forests, and it's just amazing. The roads, almost like a quilt of natural wonder, And then as the sun went down, the sky would turn, pink and purple and orange and yellow, and then into a nice cool blue. And then all of a sudden, a dot of light here, a dot of light there, little dots of household lights going on and street lights and a car going past. It's just really like art. And I just thought to myself, my gosh, what a beautiful, beautiful place. And I suppose part of that comes from when I used to go to church, and I went to church with my family at a local Catholic church named Sacred Heart, and right in the middle of Newburgh, which is a rough place at times. And I remember the church was circular in shape, which is unusual for a Catholic church, and there are stained glass windows along the very top of the sphere. And as the sun would move across the late morning sky, it would light up one window after another, just these panes, and then yellows and blues and greens and purples and reds would cast down upon the parishioners, sometimes in prayer, sometimes kneeling, sometimes sleeping, sometimes reading, sometimes concentrating. Just this amazing, just would light up the whole parish, and it was just amazing to see the beauty of this combination of the light created by the earth, this natural, this light, this divine promise, get and it filtered through the hands of humans who made these stained glass windows, and who made the stained glass windows about people who allegedly, according to biblical and archaeological records and whatnot, were good people who called the saints, prophets who try to live their lives in a positive way. And so that was even more amazing. So I like that how humans and nature could come together and create a beauty, maybe by mistake, maybe on purpose. And then I was also mentioning that the people in the church were going for inspiration, going there for hope. Would sometimes miss the entire thing, and they wouldn't even understand how beautiful it was. To be lights on me again. I can't see properly, and it to me it was just the big picture thing, the big picture thing. And so Geneseo had that same feel for me as a teenager, and I was always very young looking. So I remember we went my first year there, I was 18 and graduated from Vassar High School in Montgomery, and we went for a tour of the campus. And the tour guide kept on talking to my sister, who was 15, and not me. And then finally I mentioned that I was the one that was going to college, not her. And the tour guide laughed. Yeah, right, sure. But it was. And so then the tour guide said he was sorry for laughing. But I was just, but even at a young age, I realized how beautiful a place it was. No way could I have ever known that the things that would happen there, whether by chance or by fate, by choice or by luck, would occur there. And so it's a beautiful place. Tim Shaw, as I said, wrote that first book. Now Tim had investigated this urban legend, Western New York urban legend, for many years. And when I was about to go out with the Please Talk With Me, I was named with the film crew and production staff, to talk about the film at colleges. We spoke at Geneseo first, where the haunting occurred, then at SUNY Orange, at Penn State University. And because the film was about college kids, the thought process was, well, let's share it with college audiences, which I think was a very good fit. And the film, by the way, even though it was done in a low budget, less than $10,000, it won several awards. Best feature film, best director, Mark Atria won that. I think we had a finalist in Kyle Shea for best lead actor, male, as Kyle Shea. So it did really well, and was received properly too, because people understood that it was about supposedly real situations. And it's hard because there's always that skeptic in you who says, oh, come on, these people just want to make a buck. But when you watch the film, you realize it's not about that at all. There's no bells or whistles. It's just trying to capture the emotions of young kids trying to survive something they didn't understand. And yes, Barry, yeah, the Geneseo Valley area, just west of Geneseo campus, is beautiful. Exactly right. You can go hiking there, walking, trailing. It's just even now, some 40 years later. My gosh, my math is terrible, I guess, but it was 40 years later. It's still an amazing place. Cold in the wintertime. It is very cold, and the winds are through there like you wouldn't believe. But the Western New Yorkers seem to have a thicker skin than most of us who live south and west of them do. So it's you basically get applicated. I remember when I was in college too. That was the kind of rule. If it was below 30 degrees, no shorts. Above 30 degrees, shorts. Now, I would never go out in 36-degree weather in shorts because I'd probably be in too much pain. But that's how it was back in those days, when we kind of embraced the rugged individualism of that area. Just really, really beautiful. And Tim Shaw, when he heard that myself and Jeff, who was the individual who assisted all of us in capturing evidence, and in fact, he's a gentleman who wrote down the journal notes that have been used over the years for movies, TV shows, used for the Sci-Fi School Spirits, used for Travel Channel, My Horror Story, used for Please Talk With Me, used for many things. He wrote those notes. We were trying to understand what was going on there, as young kids. And Tim Shaw, when he heard that Jeff and I and others would be speaking about not just the movie itself, but the events that took place that inspired it, he had his friend Joe Peary drive out there, and he sat in the front row with his tape recorders and things, just recording things. And I was so nervous the first time I spoke about things. I remember seeing Ed and Lorraine Warren speak when I went to college, when I was, just a wee pup, and I couldn't believe that they would get up there and talk about the paranormal. It's a risk. Back then it was the occult, and I could never do that. I remember telling Jeff I could never get up in front of a stage in front of people and talk about ghosts. And there I was 25 years later in this talking on a stage about ghosts and talking about how life is those are curveballs, those strange juxtaposition that was, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. I told Jeff I would never do this. And then I'm next to Jeff and we're on the stage. So life has a strange way of laughing at you sometimes or putting you straight. And afterwards Tim had said, that was great, don't stop talking, don't stop sharing the experience that you have. And so he was the natural choice, being educated about the haunting, having researched the haunting, having dedicated himself to listening to what we're sharing, to write the first book on the haunting, the book on the haunting. And I was very proud, as I said before, they had John Zaffis to do the forward to that. And John Zaffis was the haunted collector, from that fame, the godfather of the paranormal. So, again, novices we were in this whole way of doing things. Most of you who do have my books also have which is called C2D1, which is the case study that's put out about 5 years ago. This is again the case study. It's a review in depth of the haunting and materials itself. So it reviews the journal notes, the photographs. In this book, there are chapters by Dale Kaczmarek who examined the photographs way back 36 years ago. Mark Tria, who directed the film Please Talk With Me. Mark Allen Keyes, who was a state police officer in Pennsylvania who investigated the haunting and wrote about his findings and interrogated us a little bit. Alan Lewis, the first person to show up at the school afterwards a year later and interview us and see what was going on with that. Charlie Manning, the priest who blessed the room, C2D1, and of course J. Jeff Unger, my friend in college, and eventual roommate, who when my first roommate, Paul Anderson, very logically fled the scene. But in the years since, the 5 years since the case was put out, so many amazing things have occurred. We have recently, meaning the people who care about these things, have discovered that the journal notes that Jeff wrote, the original ones were found, the original, along with a series of other notebooks as well. So we now have about 8 times more notes in the haunting than we had even just a few years ago. That they had fused for sci-fi. Please talk about those things. It's amazing. And then just last year, we were able to come across my friend of ours, his name is Dave, had the negative to the famous ghost picture of this skeletal image that can be analyzed now and examined rather than just saying, it's probably Photoshop, So it's been pretty fascinating as a journey to go through these things and be able to look back and reconnect with people. And through the process of sharing like this show right here I do now and all the conventions I go to. By the way, I'll be at Gettysburg next weekend. Please go. It's the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It's the Wyndham Hotel. Stephen Pamberry hosts that, and they promote that, and they organize that. A lot of great people will be there. I believe it starts on Friday and it goes through Sunday. I will be speaking Friday evening right before the 80s party. And as you can see, I'm still growing my mullet. It's for that purpose. So it should be lots of fun. Yeah. So anyway, so going back, one of the things that I thought about in the past couple of years was how do we update things? How do we share? And I thought, well, you know what? Let me just do that. Let me. Now that it's been a number of years, I've been public now with the haunting for just a little over 11 years. Over 11 years about. And so I've spoken at probably about 300 locations, easy. I've appeared on, oh my gosh, I would say probably about the same number of radio shows, broadcasts, podcasts, and things. I've spoken with thousands of people about what has occurred. I've met some fascinating people, some kind people, some inspiring people. And over the years, they have helped me to better understand what happened, not just to me and the people around me, but how that can be a positive thing, how you can survive something and have a positive result. So as we walk through tonight, I'd like, if I can, to get some, if you have any questions in the audience out there about the haunting, about the publication, about the process of sharing, about my thoughts on what it meant, anything I've learned, anything you want to ask, that now's the time to start chatting. If you want, I can even send you a link to go backstage and bring you on live with me too, if you'd like that. So let me know in the chat if you'd like to ask a question, if you'd like to do that either live on air with me or in the chat itself. Barry writes here, it's official. I'll be heading down to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash for the weekend. I found a place to stay. I can't wait. It is a great event. Yes, it is. It really is. And this, I believe, it's interesting. Some of the events have been around for a while now. I remember when they had the first one of these. I remember the first Unity Expo in New Jersey, and it's interesting how over the years that because they offer a quality product, quality speakers, quality vendors, quality causes to support, they can perpetuate. They move on in a positive way, and because I can tell you that I know the folks who run these, organize these things. And of course, it goes without saying that it's hard work and it's never ending. It's year-round work to prepare for these events. But it's a risk. You don't know when you begin these things if it will be positive, if people will show up, if people will enjoy going. And for every paranormal expo, convention, event that succeeds and can be perpetuated on year by year, there are about 5 or 6 that after a year or two do not. And many reasons for that, but one of the reasons is that it does take a year-round effort to create a huge event like this, such as the one that we'll be going to next weekend. Also, October 22nd, I'll be in Sleepy Hollow, New York, which is the birthplace of Washington Irving, who wrote the story of the Headless Horseman Ichabod Crane, for the first ever Sleepy Hollow Power Fest. I'm looking forward to that. If you want to go to another historic location and tour the sites, and of course by then you'll have the leaves turning colors, the golds and the oranges and the browns and the reds. It's a beautiful, crisp air. It's a nice time to go pumpkin picking and maybe stop and do that. I'm really trying to limit a lot of my appearances here. I do, of course, I'll be stopping out to Stella Mansion in mid-September for the event that honors Bill Freeman, who passed away this past year. I'll make an appearance there too, but I'm really trying to cut down on what I'm doing. So I'm preparing for a very big 2023, and at my age, I need the energy I can get, all of it that I can get. All right, so I think that's a cool thing. So again, welcome all, and let me talk a little about what's going on and how cool it is that it is happening. So many of you, of course, would like to write a book about your experiences, and you wonder, well, how does that happen? How do I start the writing process? What do I write about? Who will read it? What my audience is? Who's going to publish it? How do I edit it? How does things work? My experience is, because I know quite a few authors, there is no one way. The easiest way to have a book published is to self-publish. The pros of self-publishing are that you control the timeline, the content, the cover, that's very rare. You control the marketing, you control the profits, you control everything from start to finish. The downside is you might not be able to edit properly or market properly or even write well. You might not be able to. It puts so much on you that many times, unfortunately, self-published books are more like pamphlets, where they're like 55 pages, wrought with spelling checks and content errors, and ideally, you want your book to be more than just a journal, more than a pamphlet. You want your book to not just influence others, but influence them in a way that is positive, to maybe make them think in a different way. So, for example, I would not write a book about an experience walking into a house and hearing a voice. That makes a good Facebook post, Instagram, etc. But no one's going to want to read 120 pages about a night in a old house where you might have seen something or might have heard something. So you want to have a theme. You want to have something to share. So in my situation, the concept was surviving. I don't want to write a book, even though this haunting lasted for months, all of February, all of March, and most of April. Even though there were 12 witnesses, there was a college professor involved, there was a police officer involved, newspapers came, there was a priest to bless the room. All these things happened. I said I want to share it because what does it mean? I'm going to scare you. I'm going to write bad things. And I realized the theme of sharing this is surviving it. And so when I speak in public at events and conferences, what do? I talk about surviving and coping through trauma. And because for me, this was a trauma. I honestly thought I was going to die. And I thought if I did live, I would live as the person who was insane. It was not a cool thing. And it took people around me to allow me to see the value of surviving. And where does that come from? That comes from my running days. Back in the 80s and early 90s, I used to run marathons. You didn't always win. I ran 10K. You didn't always win. When you won, you celebrate. When you learn to get better. And eventually you'd say sometimes, look, I just finished my 13th marathon. That in itself is pretty cool. Life is always about winning and losing. I think people want to know how to survive. And so I realized that, yes, that's the way. Although my experience of this extreme haunting with these full-bodied apparitions, these photographs, and all these EVPs they call them was pretty intriguing. Everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own thing to survive. So I talk about surviving and understanding and appreciating life, and that runs through all of my themes and what I do and what I share. So if you're going to write a book, you shouldn't just write about a topic. It should be a way of sharing a topic information that someone hasn't before. So because no one has, to my knowledge, ever written a book or shared about a haunting list for day after day, week after week, month after month with a dozen witnesses, all these things, it's unheard of. So we shared about the haunting because it was in a way unique, provable. It's just an amazing thing. So you want to be able to have a theme, and make sure that theme runs through your book. Whether the theme is overcoming, whether the theme is profit, whether the theme is listening, is healthcare, financial success, historical relevance, whatever the theme is, weave that theme throughout your book, whatever it is, and have the moments, the events in the book that you're writing about march to the beat of that theme. And then remember, you're not writing for yourself. You know it. You're writing for others. You're writing for other people to read it. So make sure when you write, you're thinking what they would want to hear, not what you want to tell them. Ask yourself some questions, and that's the best way to do it. And that's why having a team, a publisher, is oftentimes very important. A publisher gives you the gravitas of saying, yes, I am published, not self-published, because that also gets you more ears listening, more eyes watching, and into larger venues to sell, like a Books A Million or a B. Dalton, things like that, a Barnes & Noble. You don't know how old I am. All right. Also, most publishers have editors on hand. They can check for grammatical errors, historical errors. Most of them make sure images used in the book aren't copyright images or infringements on that. Most of them have connections in terms of making the hard copies and getting that lower rates than you might. Most of them have vendor outlets that they're familiar with. So it tends to work best to have a publisher if you can get one. And how do you get one? You have to provide the publisher with something that they think is worth their time to look at and will sell, because a publisher really does two things. They inform and they make a profit. With no profit, there's a publisher, so it has to be able to sell. So those are my things. So if you want to self-publish, you can. That's your backup. Plan B is self-publishing. But if you can, try to get a publisher. And it might take a little while. It might take a few months, might take a couple of years. I was very lucky in that my fame, because of the Ghost Boy stuff back in the 80s, and then the resurgence of interest in this case with the movies and the TV shows, publishers approached me, multiple ones. So I didn't have to do the grind of pushing or selling or asking. They approached me and say, listen, what you publish this, please, and we'll help you out. I'm like, oh, okay, it's cool. So the road I walk is the common road, but I've seen and I've walked along a lot of people in my journey who have taken different approaches. But in the end, you want a quality product. There's a theme to it, a unique perspective that can be shared for others, and that's how you want to do your book. Here we go. Questions from Barry Marks. Thank you, Barry. I appreciate it. Let's see if I can do this on the screen. It'll be quite a few. When I saw you back a couple weekends ago in Caledonia, you planned to visit Father Charlie Manning in Rochester. Did you get a chance to visit him? If so, how's Charlie doing? Can you share any details of the visit? Yeah, that's Charlie Manning was the parish priest of the Interfaith Center on the college at Geneseo when I was there with Jeff and Paul and Judy and Beth and everyone. And we wanted to go to get help from a priest, because in the movies, that's what you did, and so it was actually Paul's idea, my first mate, Paul Anderson's idea, to go see a priest. And I was a bit hesitant because I went to that church sometimes and I don't want the priest to throw me out, because again, like today, it was the occult back then. And after a pretty harrowing night where the ghost was pulling my pillow in the air, I was trying to pull it back, and trying to put my feet around the bed, just struggling with this ghost, this unseen thing from my pillow, just tall as ever, and it's screaming, Paul, Paul. And Paul's like, oh my God, I shouldn't have to see this. We decided that we needed help, and we went to the Catholic Church. Unfortunately, the gentleman there, the Monsignor, the senior priest, Father Gordonier, I believe his name was, wouldn't see us. And it turns out because a number of college students have been doing pranks. I wasn't aware of this at the time. They would try to steal the communion wafer, and then try to analyze it for science and say it wasn't what it is. They would touch up the mass. So a lot of college kids were trying to, show their displeasure with the church and some of its teachings and foundations. I guess it's an early form of protest that we see in the streets a few years ago. In any event, because that was happening, he didn't want to meet with Paul and I. Assume it was a practical joke. Please help us. There's a ghost in our room. Oh dear. And then we'd expose him for whatever. Right. And so because of that, it turns out, I don't know at the time, but research has shown that in discussions, the lady there who was in charge at that point in time of the housekeeping gave us a piece of paper, a small gold paper with the name of Father Charlie, a number on it, 243 number from Geneseo. And we ended up calling that number, and we saw Father Charlie Manning at the Interfaith Center. And I was discouraged that my own church wouldn't help me, but I understand now why. And Charlie Manning read the notes that Jeff had been working on. And of course, at that point in time, they were still on a notebook. They weren't, like photocopied like this that we have copies of, thanks to Alan Lewis, who saved this for so many years. And he read through the notes, and I didn't know what to expect. I just needed some help for this. I didn't know what was going on. And he said, well, I'm going to help you. I believe you. And I was so happy. And so he eventually, less than a week later, made his way over to the college dorm room, C2D1. He came under the guise of a stereo repairman because he read the notes that the ghost came out of the stereo. And so he figured there's a stereo, I'll fix a stereo. So at the main desk to the he told the night host that he was there to fix a stereo, and then they called up and bring him on up, and he came and he blessed the room. And that was amazing on so many levels. The first level is that he helped us. He didn't have to. The second thing is the ghost showed a measure of respect for this blessing. The ghost, for the most part, stayed out of the room. He seemed to understand the priest was saying to go someplace else, and he seemed to have. He wasn't happy about it. He got very angry shortly after, but he seemed to respect that, and it gave me a peace of mind that, my gosh, maybe this can end. Maybe the haunting can come to some kind of end. It was really good. And so I never really thanked Father Charlie. I'm in the middle of this haunting. I'm a teenager. And besides, what do I have to do? Have blessed 15 rooms as the haunting spread. It wasn't a practical thing. But years later, oh my gosh, 2015, 30 years later, I'm on this show called Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. And on that show, and they filmed early in the morning. I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was barely awake. Very nice man, though, by the way. And I made sure to thank Father Charlie Manning for helping 2 scared kids. Now, I didn't know if Father Charlie had passed years before, if he was still alive, but wherever he was, on earth or in heaven, I want to express my thanks to him in this very public way on this huge market, because Coast AM is the largest overnight talk show in the country for many, many years, decades. Remember, Art Bell was there. In any event, so I thanked him, and it just so happened that he was getting wheeled out of surgery, and he was in the recovery room. And the show there was in the radio, Coast to Coast AM, and he heard me say the one time I'm on that show, I want to thank Father Charlie Manning. And what? That's me. Turn that up. Turn that up. The serendipity is incredible. It's more believable than any part of the ghost experience could ever be, And when he got home, released from the hospital, he had his friend Ty help him find me on Facebook and sent me a message. About a month later, because I'm not going to message. I found the message. I called him. I got to say hello to him, and we have a nice friendship ever since. I thanked him for helping out 2 scared kids, but it turned out he liked it too, because when you're a priest or minister and things like that, you devote yourself to God. You devote yourself to your parish. You do your weddings, your baptisms, your funerals, all these rituals, confirmations. But then when people don't need you, they don't always show up for you. When you retire, you might just spend your days roaming halls, thinking about who you help and wondering, did I do okay? And it made his heart open, and made him really happy that all these years later someone was thinking about him, knowing he did a good job. So it's cool. In any event, I was up, as Barry mentioned. Long story short, and too late for that, but I wanted to get the background for that. I was able to visit Charlie at the Shire, which is a living program housing in Rochester, New York. And I I never want to be a pain to someone. I don't want to bother them, and I don't know what his state of mind would have been, but I got to see him, and it was very, very nice. It's very, very nice. He's a little room in there, and when I say little, it's quaint, but he seems well situated. He has his TV there. He's got his cat Midnight there. And we had a nice conversation. He hadn't seen me in a while, and I think when you see somebody maybe twice in 30 years, and when you get into your mid to late 70s, sometimes the mind will catch up a little bit. But after a few seconds, the file kicked in, and he's like, "Oh, Chris," and then we had a nice conversation, and he remembered so many things. He remembered, he told me especially why Father Gordonier, whose name I've forgotten, by the way, had turned me away. He remembered, me talking with him. He remembered asking me and Paul if we were on drugs, and I said, no, I'm not on drugs. If anything, I'm on Jesus, not anything else. And he remembered so he had to recall these amazing things. So I like the fact that a 45-minute conversation and then a 15-20-minute blessing in a college room, an hour total tops in time, that happened, oh my goodness gracious, like 37 years ago, could still occupy a place in a mind that dealt with hundreds and hundreds of events and thousands of people over decades. So I was very, very happy about that. I asked him if he would try to keep himself in good spirits and good shape. I wanted to see him again. I know there's nothing's promised you, but he said he would do his best to stay with us and stay healthy. He's in a bit of a purgatory right now because his career as it was has passed. He's entering the evening of his life's journey, and I think I think he's both looking back at what was and wondering and hoping for what will be. But I can tell you he really appreciated the visit, and if any of you have the time or the inkling, I would make it a point, if you can, to go see Father Charles Manning at the Shire Living Program Development up in Rochester, New York. It was a beautiful time. I let him know that there are some big things on the horizon without telling him there are big things on the horizon specifically, but I told him I wanted to be able to see and experience some of that. At the very end of the visit, I was with my friend Phil Casey, the wingman. At the very end of the visit, he motioned me to lean forward, and I did, and he did the blessing just like he did on my forehead way back on, March 14th of 1985. So it's a pretty amazing thing. Sometimes go around and they come around, and we know that nothing is promised us, and most of our days are very good. I think many of us, when someone passes, we say, "Oh, I wish I could have had." So I always tell people, make the effort to say hello, to visit people in your life, so you don't have to worry about looking for them and finding them afterwards. There are a lot of great psychics that I know, mediums, clairvoyants, who can reach across the veil and communicate with people who have gone past, but it's so much easier. It's so much more effective. You can just do it yourself here and now with your physical body and physical form and physical ears and physical voice. It's one of the things too where I'd done the event in Caledonia. Ernie was there, Pam Gilly was there, Ted Van Son orchestrated the event. You were there, Barry. And sometimes you think, thanks, well, I'm just gonna go home, but we took the time to head up to see Father Charlie, and boy, was that a great experience. It's kind of thing where you put your cup out and it gets filled, and I hope he's doing very well. I can never repay him for the kindness he showed us and what he did back in Geneseo all those years ago, especially when you're a young kid looking for some adult in your life to say, hey, I got you, I got you. And likewise, Dr. Lawrence Kassler, professor of psychology at Geneseo, he was fascinated by what we were going through as a group, and part because of the psychological effects that we were dealing with in terms of how do we establish things, what's our reason for believing these things are going on, and also because he himself wondered about the possibility of the spiritual entering into the physical realm. And he would actually travel around the country investigating very quietly claims of hauntings, and most of the time he left empty-handed, not quite sure what to make of that, but feeling people believe what they believed even without evidence or maybe even reason to. But he was really perplexed and compelled. I remember him saying, my gosh, I travel all over the country, and here in my back door, my back step, it's happening right here. And he actually was an individual who advised Jeff and I think Beth was in the room because Beth arranged a meeting with him to get evidence, to go into B2 where the girls were living, and B2B1, that's where Judy was, and Linda and Beth, because the ghost went there after it was asked to leave my room. And that's where we recorded the ghost sessions, the ghost tapes, and he was instrumental in doing that. And he was really intrigued too, that the ghost seemed, by all accounts, sometimes people are self-focused, but by all accounts, every person he spoke to, the ghost was focused almost solely on me, and he was curious as to why that would be. And I'm sure he thought about everything from poltergeists to lost spirits to whatever the case may be. And I remember he wanted to test me. He wanted to run me through a series of these exercises to see if I had any kind of innate, latent, actualized abilities, such as the kind that people like Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, had claimed to have, back years ago. So again, I'm dating myself, but those are the facts. I stand by them, Your Honor. In any event, I remember he had these things called, well, I know what they're called, but there were these cards. I think I have a pack right here. They're these cards he had. And each card, they're very strange. It wasn't like playing cards, but each card had an image on them. I never opened these because I don't do them, but there was a square, a circle, wavy water, a star, I think a cross. And anyway, he's got the cards out, and he put them down in front of him face down. He said, Chris, I'm going to focus on the card at the top of the pile. And I want you to read my thoughts or pick up, if you can, what card I'm focusing on. I'm like, I can't do this. This is silly. Please don't make me feel worse than I already do feel about not being on it. No, just please. All right, so we went through a series of 10, 11 cards, and he stopped, and he said, well, fascinating. I said, what's so fascinating? He goes, you get everyone wrong. I'm like, I told you. I said, I'm not. He said, no, you don't understand. You got everyone wrong, which is unlikely. And of 11 cards, odds you'll get at least 2 or 3 of them correct. However, not only did you get them all wrong, you got the next card almost every single time. So I didn't get the card he was focusing on. I got the card next in the deck. I think every time but one, I think 10 of 11, or maybe it's 9 of 10. Because that is unheard of, and that's what I call positive one-step progression. I'm like, note to self, this is weird. But again, he was looking for reasons why the ghost might have either been attracted to me, or why I may have been able to see this more than others, given the fact that I took the picture of the ghost. It came out when others, it would not. And so fascinating things. Eventually, I got too nervous about the whole thing of being a potential rat on a wheel, in some lab. And so I decided I chose not to have any more contact or conversation, possibly out of fear or worry, but that's a choice that I made. And I regret that a little bit, like a lot of things. In the movies, you're always cool and smart. You always win. You get the person you love. You beat the monster. You go home. You have a snack. In real life, it doesn't work that way. Heroes in our world, in the real world, those try their best and care about others, And so that's the best I could try to do in my version of being a hero, is just trying to be a kind person, trying to be a smart person, help others. And that's what I aspire to, Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of thing. Here we have a comment from Mark. Hello, Mara. Nice to hear from you. So encouraging to see many good things on the horizon. Nice, even things thought lost can be regained. How did it feel knowing that those notes in that photo negative were discovered as currently existent? Yeah, well, as you know better than most, we thought for sure, we knew, in quotes, for sure that those things were lost. And I'd seen them for 20 years. In fact, Jeff had a recollection of burning those things at a time in his life where he's trying to put the haunting in the past and turn a new leaf over, But as Jeff said, it's a story that wants to be told. It's a story that just seems to want to expand and be heard and be recognized. And I think that, as odd as it sounds, as delusional as it sounds, it is the absolute fact. It is absolute truth that is the case. And now that I've seen the good that it does and inspiration it brings to people, I'm very proud of that, and I'm very glad that Jeff had that thought back in college. It was many years ago. Yeah, it's I'm relieved that those things exist, because like anyone, we all need some degree of evidence to show. If someone says they love you, it's nice to hear. I want to see that you do, though. If someone says they got your back, well, I really appreciate that gesture, but let's hope you do. If someone says, I'll pay you back tomorrow, if someone says, I'll drive you to work if your car breaks, those are all nice things to say. But as they say, the proof is in the pudding. And it's so nice that people now, anyone, can look at the original notes and with Jeff's pencil on the original aging paper. Not that a photocopy isn't bad, not is bad, not that a digital copy isn't cool. It's just to know this is a real thing and to look at it and just to feel it and to sense it and to be a part of that is pretty cool. And Jeff didn't write those notes to be shared. He didn't write them for projects. He wrote them for us, for me, to see if we can figure out what on earth is going on, and if necessary, to get the help I needed with these illusions I was having, which at first I refused to accept. It was a ghost. No, it was drugs in my food. It was a gas stick in the room, a practical joke, a hypnosis. It couldn't have been those things. And Jeff is the one really who gave me the sounding board to build my survival technique off of, and really cool thing. And as far as the negative goes, I love it because it's the holy grail, if you will. Every night, thousands of human beings go out in search of evidence that they think is going to be top notch. A full bad apparition, just something, a voice talking back to them, answering the question they asked, a hidden where they look for these things that most people never find but always hope for. It's like when a baseball player hits the baseball arcs into the sky, approaches the heavens. It never reaches the heavens, but it might come down over the wall for a home run, and that's good enough. Jeff and I and my friends, by mistake, perhaps, by luck, perhaps, by chance, maybe through hard effort, maybe through choices, we have these holy grails of these evidences of this EVP on the cassette where the ghost is saying, "Help me, Chris." And we have this photograph of this human skeleton above my bed where I pointed to, So it's cool, secondly, because it allows people to put aside not doubt, but put aside the self-fulfilling prophecy of saying, I'll never get there, I'll never find it, it doesn't exist that way, because I think that's inspiring. Like we as human beings, we want to be inspired. We really do. We're hard-shelled and hard-nosed. We love watching shows on TV that make us laugh or cry. The reason Stranger Things and shows like that and Star Wars, and they do so well because part of us is a child dreaming for more than just the 9 to 5, the clock on the wall, just the eating, the sleeping. There's got to be something more, right? The wars, the politics, the illnesses. No, stop. And now, because of the searching of many people, including yourself and Jeff and myself and Alan Lewis and Dave Flass, and we now have these original artifacts that in some ways are unique, not just ancient, and so I am so thrilled and so happy. It was kind of like the final piece, and now I can with everything extant, I can now begin journaling and finishing up my memoir about looking back what the journey was like, and just really, really remarkable. Thank you, Mar. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate what you do to help other people, and I'm looking forward to your album and your live performances coming up next year. I really am. And yes, Barry writes, the same thing happened to me with Charlie Manning. I first met him in Rochester at one of your events there some time ago. Then a few years later, for your latest book release, that's 2017, right at the Rochester Parafest, Father Charlie Manning sat down to the left of me and he remembered me. We had quite a nice conversation before your presentation at the Parafest. He does have a little bit of sense of humor. Yeah, he is funny. He has a great sense of humor. It's almost like an imper sense of humor, which I really like. It's interesting how we have in our minds certain stereotypes. One stereotype that people have of priests or pastors or ministers is that of like in Poltergeist, the gaunt figure and the black and the white streams and the severe personality, or maybe the Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? The gentleman singing, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Very, very serious, and in a way, Father Gordonier was like that back at Geneseo. Then you have your Friar Tuck, your more sociable, priests, those who will laugh with you and sing with you and provide a different aspect, different lens to view priests and ministers through, and that was certainly Charlie Manning. In fact, I have to say, and this is more about me than him at first, when we went to see him, Father Manning, I was hoping he would be 6'9" and 85 pounds and gaunt with a little widow peak hairline and have long bony fingers and a fire of spirit of God is in his eyes and you there spirits, almost like a mix between Saruman and Gandalf, because this ghost kicking my butt and I wanted some, pardon the term, badass priest to kick his butt. And so when he first opened the door, I assumed it was one of his helpers, like a student administrator, an intern, and so I'm like, we're looking for Father Charlie. And he goes, I'm Father Charlie. I thought, oh my God, he's like 30. he is so nice. He is not going to be able to help us, and this is catastrophic. But that was because of my own impression of what a priest should be, and not what a priest actually is. And here's the kick to this. Had he been that austere, had he been that severe, he probably said to me, just as Father Gordon said to me, I'm sorry, pray. I won't have this. It's not a joke. So luckily it happened the way it did happen because he took the time to read every single page. At that point, at least 25 of them of Jeff's journal. It took almost an entire hour in doing so. Part out of curiosity, part of interest, part out of dedication to what he was about to do. And when he looked up for those notes, I remember he just said, I'm going to help you. I thought, wow, that is so incredible. So, it seems like the person I was as a teenager and the person I am now are very, very different through life experience. I'm not saying I'm any smarter per se or any better, but I do know more things, and I'm less a judge. I'm less to criticize. I'm slower to those things, and I'm more happy to be around folks who help others, and that has become my inspiration in that regard. So yeah, thank you, folks. Really good conversations and questions. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping next time we do this, maybe in around November or so, we'd have a Q&A. I'll get some of you to come on air with me. I don't care if you have your little profile silhouette there, it's fine, and come on with me and talk. I know it's an odd thing to be seen by lots of people, and but I think it might be fun for you if I do that next time too. Just to go back a little bit again, I'm just very proud and very pleased to announce that my memoir, The Ghost Boy, a reflection of the past, is going to publish in about 10 days. It should be out, hopefully, with revisions and modifications, and around Halloween time, around just in time for the Sleepy Hollow Power Fest, and then in time for the big things that are happening. And I have to keep my word and not say anything. Next spring, which is going to, if things are as they appear to be, put me into the atmosphere, the stratosphere. I hope I'm ready for that. So what is this? Would you be able to share an excerpt from your memoir for us? Gadzooks. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. I guess I could do that. I can let me give it a shot. Let me pull this up, the Word document, so I can get this. Okay. All right. Here's what I'll do. I'll read a section if you don't mind. I haven't read it aloud before, so I'm hoping this will be good. And understand that just like in C2D1, which by the way is now book 1 of the sequence. All right. So you have the case study, same publisher, of the events and analysis of them. And so this is a follow-up to the companion piece to this book, The Ghost Boy, which is my own reflections and understandings based on the events that are analyzed in that book by researchers, directors, state troopers, priests, etc., writers. All right. So here I go. Ahem, as my friend Jeff would say. Ahem. Fear. Some say there are 2 natural reactions to a crisis: flight or fight. My experience has taught me otherwise. And that is that there is only one true instinctual reaction to a crisis: fear. And when we fear, we freeze. This is the most natural and rational of responses, and that it affords our minds with potentially vital time in order to understand what is actually occurring around us. Over time, we can train ourselves or be trained to fight or to flee in a crisis. Firefighters are trained to run into burning buildings, while those who suffered through a prior fire will understand to quickly run from them. But most of us will just stare with horrified expressions and watch the building burn to ashes. It is March 10th, 1985. The digital clock face in room C2D1 reads 3:31 p.m., but I am not there to see it. I am lying, face down, stark naked, shivering wet, and bleeding on the floor of a bathroom some 30 feet away. My eyes are open widely, but they are not focusing. A numbing cold is creeping through my 19-year-old body, a body that has been efficiently honed by preparing for and racing in 9 marathons. But the source of the icy cold that now races through my still form is not the same square tile covered floor that presses uncomfortably up against my face, my chest, and my thighs. Rather, the sensation is spreading from an area near the center of my back, an area where the wounds are, the scratches, and the blood. My toes are cramped from the pressure of being pressed unnaturally upwards by the floor since I fell, but I am too traumatized to shift my feet in order to stop the pain. My breathing remains steady in spite of my own growing fear, quite possibly because my body is being shut down. My mouth is open slightly, just as it was at the precise moment when I stared into the mirror above the sink and first saw those 3 impossible scratches. I'm beginning to panic. My thoughts race frantically from synapse to synapse, trying to make a connection that makes some sense to help me through this, whatever this actually is. But a manic negativity has already seized control. Why did I choose to come here to Geneseo? Death is here. Well, hopefully that's okay. That's a section of, so it really, I take the reader into the experience with me as best I can, not just to describe the dates or who was around or what the weather was that day, but put someone into the place safely of what it was like to have this happen. I think the most important thing that I can say, aside from my normal catchphrase of if it's true and help say it, is thank you, Barry, appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for listening. Um, I think that one of the most important things that I can do is to provide a safe way of examining things. Every day, as I mentioned before, thousands of humans, young, old, rich, poor, of every nationality, of every religion, agnostics, are looking for some answers about what happens to the human, the soul, if there is a soul, what happens after physical life, what's out there. And I always tell them, listen, you may find what you're looking for. You may not, but you may. And I hope that what you find is what you thought it would be. That's all good things. But the bottom line is sometimes those things may find you. And that's exactly what happened to me on February 11th, 1985. And thank you, Vince. I appreciate it. I really do. And thank you for the cold arms. I wasn't going to read anything, but you gave me the healthy challenge, so I accepted it, and so I really do appreciate that. So hopefully you had a nice hour with me. It's just only me, and it's unfortunate, but I want to do something different. I really did. I want to just share the news, and hopefully it was interesting for you folks. I hope you're all safe and healthy. Hope your family's doing well. I hope to see you all at Gettysburg or in Norristown or Sleepy Hollow. If not, maybe tune back in next week here, August 17th at 9 p.m. on BB3 TV. I love you guys. I really do. I don't know if I'll be here for one more day or 50 more years. Who knows, right? I hope that what I've done over the years has been a positive thing. I hope that spirit has found some rest, and I hope that whatever kindness you show me, whatever compassion you show me, dignity, whatever help, that I've been able to pay you back at least my thanks, because there is no ghost boy without any of you I really do love you guys, and I hope to see you next week. Stay safe. Remember, if it's true and it helps, say it. Good night.
This has been Turn to Gold on BB3 TV.